We're now moving on to item 4, moving on to oral communications.
I was shocked at the last city council meeting where you, Mr. Mayor, decided to take a major departure from tradition of a participatory democracy and take it upon yourself to make an appointment. That was really a slap in the face to your fellow city council members. I'd like to encourage you to think about building bridges, not dynasties. It's just flat out wrong.
I'll just make a little comment.
Your Honor, we should probably ask if anyone else wants to speak, even if they didn't sign up.
Got it.
I've been coming to city council meetings for over 45 years through 7 mayors and many, many council members and staff members. And I have always had a great deal of respect. I've sat in the chair and slumped. I've laughed. I've clapped. I've disagreed. I've shook my head. I've been amazed. I've been shocked. And I'm afraid. Not because of Black Lives Matter. I'm afraid for what I consider misuse of a power. I was amazed that a former mayor renamed a building and just announced that he did it. I'm amazed that a current mayor has stepped from tradition and named someone to a commission without having others participate in the process. And I hope that that changes.
Hi, my name is Jackie Eklund, and I'm a lifelong resident of Torrance. I also saw the meeting online. I believe in a transparent government, a transparent small city government. I believe all the council should have had input in this appointment, and I'm just expressing, I hope you reach this decision to do that.
Super. I think based on the comment area, there is a point where clarifications can be made, so I'm going to take the opportunity to just make a little clarification. Matter of fact, I think since I've taken the seat as a mayor here, the first council appointment was back in August. I think we did it the AKA traditional way. I know you remember it's August 9th or something like that. We had commission
September 14th.
No, I mean, wasn't there one on August 9th as well? All I'm making a point is August 9th, we did have a whole slew of commission appointment, and we did use the traditional process. And as we're approaching this vacant appointment due to someone's resignation, and upon learning from the city clerk and others how the ordinance is written, I interviewed all 3 candidates, decided that to streamline, make things a little efficient, that since that's the way the ordinance were written, I was able to interview all 3 candidates and make an appointment and asking for the approval of the council. And I chose to do that for this single vacancy seat. But actually, back in August 9th, it was done. Most people call it the traditional way. Item 9A from the city clerk.
This item is for your honorable body to consider removal of Shamindra Manbahal from the Civil Service Commission. Correspondence received after the posting of the agenda has been prepared as a supplemental. There may have been additional correspondence that is not in the first supplemental. We will do another supplemental and post it later today. I would like to address a couple of the comments in the email. There was a comment that more investigative background needed to be done on applicants. So I just wanted to clarify the city clerk's role in commission applications. The city clerk has no investigative duties with regard to commission applicants. The only duties the city clerk is responsible to cover is that to ensure the applicant is a registered voter in the city of Torrance and that they have completed commission certification training.
On September 13th, 2022, under item 6F, a decision was made to appoint and fill an empty seat on the Civil Service Commission. The appointment was made without the usual due diligence and input from the entire council, and the individual was issued the oath of office. To create the opportunity to allow the entire council to see the applications and perform their own due diligence before having a vote, it was asked if a vote could be changed and the item reconsidered. This is not possible because the oath had been issued. The only way to allow the opportunity for the entire council to see the applications, perform their research, and interview and contribute to the vote is to consider removing the appointee and to start over. I must mention there is now information available for consideration during our discussion today. I would like to thank the mayor and my fellow council members for your consideration of this special meeting and its quick scheduling to have the opportunity to discuss this issue prior to the next Civil Service Commission meeting, which is this evening and includes an important hearing. I also support Councilmember Griffith's request to bring back the item to discuss the code pertaining to commission appointments at a future meeting to allow all council members the opportunity to contribute to the nomination process. Typically, we receive a binder with all the applications included prior to any appointment. May I ask why this was not made available when we were actually asked to vote on it?
Councilwoman, the binders were created. They were taken upstairs. I was asked to collect them by the mayor and return them to my office. I did leave them intact in case any of you asked to see them. I did provide unredacted copies to Isela Bristino in the city council's office for her to provide those the redacted copies to you.
When will the discussion be coming back to the council regarding the code and the process?
We're aiming for the 27th, so next Tuesday.
Okay, so then it would be possible to delay any further commission appointments until we have an opportunity to address the process?
The decision whether to delay appointments would be at the council's discretion. If you wanted to wait, you'd be waiting essentially 45, 60 days.
Civil Service has several personnel hearings going on currently, and they do need a full commission in order to hear those hearings. So if you would just take that under consideration as well.
Let me just jump in just to help solve this concern issue, because I believe there's going to be another appointment vacancy due to the appointment of Councilwoman Lewis. And I know that that was going to be the agenda. I would tell you and the public that this next appointment, we're going to go to the traditional process so that there's no concern. If that is the issue, I'm just going to say it right out loud, because if that's the case, it helps the process go through.
First, I want to thank Councilwoman Kalani for working to put this together and bring this special and important meeting forward. I will admit to being caught completely off guard by the way this appointment was handled. I made a horrible assumption that we would be doing things normally. When I came into the City Hall last Tuesday prior to the meeting, I asked myself the question, why don't I have the applicants' applications? And I went to Isela and asked her, and she provided me unredacted copies, and then I was also informed that we won't have a decision on nominating or choosing anything, and so that really threw me for a loop, because that's never ever happened in my over 8 years now on the council. I was just completely flabbergasted and caught off guard. I didn't know how to react or respond, and unfortunately I believe I made a wrong decision on my vote, and I'm happy for the opportunity to have that vote corrected here today. I want to say something else that's not necessarily specific to this item. I'm embarrassed to say this, but we've had 2 emergency special meetings in the past 3 weeks. In my 8+ years, I keep harping on that, I think we've had maybe 1 every 2 years. And those meetings in the past were for items that had a very specific deadline that were not in the council's control. But these 2 special meetings that we've had are issues really, in my opinion, related to the actions of our council. To me, I find that's unacceptable, and we need to work together and find a way to function more appropriately as a council. I'm looking forward to some improvements in that area.
I wanted just to make one statement so it's clear that Civil Service Commission has 7 members, yes, through resignation, and then the second one would be mine. With that being said, yes, there are a lot of important issues that are coming up before the commission. However, there are still 5 members on the board that could proceed with at least one of the upcoming agenda items and still have a quorum. Civil service is too important to throw anyone in there. It takes a concise streamline of thought, research, a lot of time to understand the issues, rather than rushing a vote or rushing an appointment to civil service, that we take the time needed to be thoughtful about our choices and definitely give the folks on civil service that respect and deference to having a member that is actually going to be able to contribute as soon as they're appointed. If it is a time issue to try to get someone on civil service, I just wanted to remind everyone, even with that, they would still have a quorum with 5 sitting members, so the council can take the time that it needs. Thank you.
I also like to make a few comments. After the last meeting and the appointment process, I did receive quite a few emails, calls from the community, and the feeling at this point the community has that a lot of divisiveness is going. So I just want to get out of my chest that we are working together, and the decision we are making to make sure, though, to let the community know that we hear you, and thank you for your engagement. Thank you for calling us. Thank you for your emails. It is very important matter that you are engaging yourself, and I appreciate you letting us know where you stand. It is so critical that we need to either change this charter or make an amendment and hear your concerns and do the right thing, what is for the community, for the city.
I have 100% confidence in this council. I know that every single person sitting here has the interest of the city at heart, and I think that we will get there. We might have different paths, but I think that we will commit to the city, that we will be stronger and we will do well. I just want to say I appreciate each and every one of you.
Wasn't too happy to hear that was going to be a special meeting on this, considering the applicant applied just like everyone else. I'm just going to get into it. I'm not going to sugarcoat this because I think it's not necessary. I think Mr. Manbahal is very qualified, and in a way, he may actually be overqualified. His background and leadership roles, his application, his interview was superb. I don't think he would have got 5 votes yes that night. You know, I know we keep on hearing that the mayor was a dictator or some tyrant. It still needed approval of the council, which he got. He didn't appoint somebody, he nominated somebody. He nominated the person that he thought best fits the job. 5 of us agreed that night. Now, after the appointment from the council, there was some articles that popped up. Now, none of those articles said that he was charged or convicted of anything. As a matter of fact, when I actually read the fact that he got a severance pay of $201,000, 10 months of health insurance paid, which is still currently being paid by the water district, allowed to cash out his unused vacation and administrative leave, told that he had to sign a confidentiality agreement, and provided a letter of recommendation. Does that sound like somebody that did something wrong? And if he did, where's the charges? Where's the conviction? But the biggest question we need to ask ourselves, are we putting the same kind of scrutiny and background checks on everyone that applies for a commission, let alone applying for city council seat? The answer is no, because we don't have a process. Do we need a process? I think we do need a process to look into people's backgrounds before they serve on these very important commissions. I find it kind of disheartening how this has not become about Mr. Manbahal. It's about Mayor Chan staying within his rights on the policy, okay? The policy of Torrance allows the mayor to make the nomination, but not the appointment. I wish people would understand the difference. When you nominate somebody and it still needs approval of the council, that means it needs more than four or more votes on the council. And correct me if I'm wrong on this.
The language actually is that they're appointed by the mayor with the approval of the council. So it's actually not a nomination, it's an appointment, but the approval would require 4.
But it's conditional.
It does require the approval of the council.
Okay, so it's not a unilateral decision. It's not something where the mayor says, I want to nominate this person, I want to appoint this person, and that's it. It still needs approval of the council, majority vote.
That's correct.
And we got that. Five individuals voted yes. Now, this information that came up after that meeting, I understand why it's a concern. It concerns me as well, and that's why I think Mr. Manbahal is in the back. Hopefully he can answer some questions within his legal authority, because I think with a confidentiality agreement, he can't really get into details. Now, there's other articles from the city of Hawthorne. From what I've read, he took a pay advance of $25,000, and from what I read, he thinks he paid it back. Some individuals that were investigating think that it wasn't fully paid back. But nonetheless, I didn't see any charges, convictions, or any kind of anything other than basically hearsay. I think I paid it back. Some people think they didn't pay it back. City manager telling Mr. Manbahal to use reserves. It sounds all too familiar. Okay, this is a practice that's been done here in Torrance, obviously, and it's been done across many other cities. I really do think that the person on trial here is the mayor, and the process that he decided to take. That's why you guys are here. You guys aren't here about Mr. Manbahal. I don't think we're here because of Mr. Manbahal. We want to change a policy, and I don't think this is the right way to do it. We should have brought back an item to change the policy on how we appoint, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I would like to change the policy to include, possible, background checks or Google search. I guess it was that easy to find some articles. I think the biggest issue Mr. Manbahal has is that he's been in leadership positions that sometimes end you up in the daily breeze. I wish we took this kind of scrutiny on everybody that's on the commissions currently, because I can bet you we can Google everybody's name and find something on somebody. Now, are these the grounds to remove Mr. Manbahal? I don't know. I think maybe our city attorney can tell us if there's a policy that Mr. Manbahal violated of some sort. What I see here is somebody that has been in very high-ranking positions in life, has a lot of experience running the show, found himself in situations that aren't necessarily pleasing when it comes to I guess whatever, the public looking into it and say, "Oh, wow, he took $25,000." Yeah, it's called a pay advance. From what I see, it's actually not common, but it does exist, and it's within the law. And I believe, reading from the article, it required city council approval, that $25,000 pay advance. So it wasn't, done behind the scenes. But regardless, do we have a policy that would make Mr. Manbahal not a viable candidate? Obviously, when we voted him in, 5 people voted yes because we felt that he was the right candidate. Then new information comes out, and now we're here. My question would be, under what grounds are we trying to remove a sitting commissioner, somebody that's been already sworn in and voted 5-2? We talk about unity. The first step to unity is, conversation, talking. I really do feel that if we're going to come to the table, we have to be fair. I see some stuff whether it's being said here or online, calling the mayor a dictator, a tyrant. Everything he did was within the policy that many other cities actually share, where the mayor makes the appointment with council approval. I think one of those cities, correct me if I'm wrong, is Redondo Beach, our neighbor. I don't think Mr. Manbahal, based on what I see, should be removed. He's an individual that has a lot of experience on his shoulders. He has the ability to understand on day one everything that needs to be understood in the Civil Service Commission. If there's something that's brought up tonight and evidence that shows that he was charged with something or convicted of something, then I might change my position. But until then, I just wish that we have the same scrutiny on every commissioner and not just handpick one out because of the process. Mr. Manbahal would not even be a subject tonight if it wasn't for the, let's call it, controversial appointment style of Mayor Chen. And I say controversial is because we made it controversial, because if the policy says you can do something, and he unilaterally said, you know what, I'm going to follow the policy the way it's written, and I'm going to do the appointment. I didn't know who was going to appoint, sat down here and voted 5-2 to appoint the person in question. If we want to change the policy, I'm all for it. Let's do it. I'm just disappointed that we got dragged out here 8 o'clock in the morning to discuss one individual when we should be discussing a policy, not the individual himself. We're unfairly targeting Mr. Manbahal because of his past in leadership positions that made him a subject of a Daily Breeze article, which I know very well how newspapers try to embellish stories. If it was me having to apply and they pull up an article from 2018 that I was selling t-shirts for Evict Coyotes, would that make me not eligible to be on a commission? Because that's really what's going on. The Daily Breeze wrote something that he supposedly did wrong, and I don't see any evidence that there was any kind of major repercussions or charges filed or asked to write a check to the city. That I don't know. So maybe we'll get some explanation tonight. I'm hoping we get clarification that shows that we as a city need to do better to vet our commissioners and maybe even council member applicants. But until then, I just don't, not having a process in place it's almost like we're inventing a policy as we go along, and I'm not in favor of that.
I'm sitting here finding it a little amusing that we're having a discussion about being very qualified or overqualified and experienced in this process. My other comment is I would have liked to interview all the candidates. However, I was not provided the materials to do so. My question is to either the city clerk or the city attorney. If we do vote to remove, does this prevent any candidate for reapplying again for the 2 open civil service positions or any other council?
No.
If we did take this action today, it would not prevent him from reapplying, correct? And he'd have the same opportunity the next round.
Correct, or even other people could apply as well.
After hearing this, I think probably one area where there could be a misstep was, as I was talking to the city clerk, and I'll say before I click you in, was that as I was trying to streamline the process of filling a vacancy, is that every member of the city council should have the opportunity to read through the detail before, deciding what to vote. And I think as Selim might have mentioned to me, some council member probably even started the interviewing process already, which no one was prevented from interviewing, I believe. But I think it's worth a rediscussion. So thank you for bringing that up.
I never meant any disrespect to you, Mayor. This was about my vote, which was wrong. And I was caught off guard as well. And it was out of respect and support of this council as a team that I voted the way I did. And then I didn't feel good about it. And I contacted City Attorney Sullivan for a way to rectify that. It's my responsibility to do what's right for this council, and it's my responsibility to do what's right for the staff, and it's my responsibility to do what's right for the residents and businesses of the city of Torrance and the visitors that visit Torrance as well. What I did wasn't right, and I was simply trying to rectify it. There is absolutely no way I meant you any disrespect. This isn't about you, Mayor Chen, and it's not about anybody on this council. It's about how I felt about my actions.
At least just for a record, I want to share with the public before I click in Councilman Kaji. I actually don't have any prior relationship with the candidate that we appointed, Mr. Manbahal. I know there could be some folks who think I had. I've actually had 2 interviews with Mr. Manbahal. He was actually one of the group of applicants back for the August 9th appointment. He was in my office. Just like everyone else, I see another applicant in the room here. I do my best to have an in-person interview. He revealed the fact to me that he resigned from the West Valley Water District, looked through the entire background and grilled him upside down, sideways to the right. That was my first time meeting him. And the second time was the second interview when he applied for the Civil Service Commission along with 2 other applicants. So just in case there was a curiosity, there was a personal friend or someone interviewed him twice, and as I always do with my due diligence, based on the information given.
For this item that's before us today regarding the recommendation by the city clerk to remove a city commissioner, first I'd like to make an opening statement, and then I have a series of questions. Under the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, each citizen has a right to due process under the law. And that right extends to every citizen, to every member of this council, to all the staff, and also to our commissioners. I open with this comment because, to me, what's most important is that, and I think some of the concerns that I've heard from the public, is that there is a process, and this process must be fair, this process must be objective, but above all, the process must respect the rights of the individual. What I want to emphasize before I start with my questions is that everyone should be accorded the same fairness and respect in the process as anyone else. There is no favoritism given to anyone else. And I believe that the same rights to due process, especially in this case, procedural due process, should be accorded to Mr. Manbahal. Secondly, I do have a personal stake in this issue, not because I have any previous connection with Mr. Manbahal, but because of a personal stake in due process. Some of you may be aware that in World War II, more than 120,000 Japanese Americans were illegally stripped of their due process rights. They were illegally recategorized from American citizen to enemy alien and were placed into prison camps. My family both my mother and father's side of the family, were all placed in these camps. It wasn't until 1988, when President Reagan signed the Civil Liberties Act, that the federal government apologized and issued redress to all of those living former internees. So I am highly sensitive and highly focused on the due process rights of everyone who comes before this council, who voluntarily offers their time and services for the benefit of the city and who do so voluntarily. I want to ensure that we strictly abide by the procedural due process under the Constitution and under the ordinance of the city. Since today's meeting is based upon a recommendation by yourself as a city clerk to remove Mr. Manbahal from his commission, my first question is, who or what prompted you to agendize this item for today's special meeting?
It was the request from Councilmember Kalani.
At that time, what information was provided to you to provide the basis for this recommendation?
There was a misunderstanding with the recommendation on my item at the past council meeting. The council felt they did not have a decision, that it was mandatory that they voted in approval of the mayor's appointment.
In the last round of commission appointments, you provided notebooks to each of the members of the council.
That is correct.
And in that notebook, which I think was provided to us sometime in the month of July, was also included Mr. Manbahal's application.
That is correct.
And at that time, Mr. Manbahal was applying for a number of commissions.
Correct.
Okay. Do you happen to remember which commissions?
Airport was his first choice, but I don't remember the other two. And then when civil service came open, we always reach out to all the applicants and say, there's an additional appointment in this commission. Are you interested? And if they call us, we will mark on their application that they wish to move forward to another appointment for a different commission.
By providing that information to all members of the council back in July, all the members had equal access to his application at that time.
At that time, yes, but we also collect those binders and applications so that we can shred them after the meeting, after the appointment process.
Could you briefly describe your job duties as city clerk?
The city clerk is responsible for the city records, maintaining the records. We do administrative items with regard to commission, bringing commission appointments forward, accepting the applications, etc. City clerk is also the elections official for the city of Torrance. I am the FPPC filing officer. That's the Fair Political Practice Commission filing officer. I accept all the campaign statements from the candidates and the council, as well as conflict of interest filings from all the city employees and mayor and council.
As part of record keeping, and as it relates to today's meeting, has the office of the city clerk ever made a recommendation for the removal of a sitting commissioner?
No, I looked at the past time that the commissioner was removed, and it was done under the city manager's office.
Next, I have some questions for our city attorney, Mr. Sullivan. In the city ordinance or city charter, what is the section that applies to special meetings?
Special meetings is actually covered by the Brown Act, so it just requires that in 54956, it can be called by the presiding officer, which would be the mayor, or by a majority of the members of the legislative body.
In our city charter, is it section 713 that pertains to special meetings?
Yes, and that mirrors the Brown Act.
Could you read that first section of under 713, please?
Special meetings may be called at any time by the mayor or by a majority of the members of the city council upon compliance with the notice requirements for special meetings prescribed by state law, provided, however, that any special meeting of the city council shall be a validly called special meeting without giving such notice as provided if all members of the city council shall give their consent in writing to the holding of the meeting, and such consent is on file with the office of the city clerk at the time of holding such a meeting.
I'd like to focus on the section that you just read, which states, if all members of the city council shall give their consent in writing to the holding of such meeting, and such consent is on file in the office of the city clerk at the time of holding such meeting. Has every member of the council provided their consent to the special meeting?
I would have to defer to the city clerk. I think she keeps record of whether people waive notice or not. The Brown Act trumps section, the charter section 714. So as long as the majority calls it, it doesn't matter if the other members consent.
City clerk, have you received written consents from every member of the council?
Yes, every member of the council has a waiver of notice filed in my office.
a waiver of notice. Okay. Does that mean that every member of the council has agreed to this meeting?
No, it's just a waiver of notice of the meeting.
Mr. City Attorney, on September 15, 2022 at 7:08 p.m., you forwarded an email to the mayor and the council regarding the request by Councilmember Kalani requesting a special meeting.
Before we get into any any conversations between myself and the council would have to take a motion to waive the attorney-client privilege.
Well, I know that today we are in a special meeting and this is an open meeting versus holding this meeting in closed session. But I believe that was the desire of the 4 members of the council who wanted to hold this in public. I would like to follow up on that, because if we're going to hold this meeting in public, then I believe the public has a right to all information so that we can all make a qualified decision today.
But we'd need to have some sort of roll call vote, because we can't.
Yeah.
I don't want to get in the process of waiving
Let's do a
attorney-client
roll call
privilege.
vote, and I think in the context, I believe what the question is specific of this special meeting.
So is it this specific email, the conversation? I think we should be specific about what attorney-client privilege we're waiving.
Maybe I'm wrong, but it was my understanding that was this something that could have been done in a closed session?
No,
Thank
there's
you.
no provision in the Brown Act to allow a closed session provision on meeting on this.
And that is why I was not able to talk with every council member direct, but I did, out of respect to the mayor, have a discussion with him prior to this moving forward.
Put in the context with the requests of what do we want to have as public records.
I'd like to make a motion that for purposes of this special meeting today, that those emails that were provided by the city attorney to the members of the council be divulged in public.
Second that.
Councilman Kaji, you just want to know what was discussed with us by the attorney? That's all you wanted to know?
I guess we should clarify. Are you asking to actually release the actual email, or you want to be able to discuss the email?
I'd like to discuss the email today, but if necessary for the benefit of the public, but also as part of the procedural due process for the commissioner.
If I could address that, he has no procedural due process rights. He doesn't have a right to be a commissioner. It's only a privilege. So procedural due process does not apply here.
I believe the individual has rights.
He does not have due process rights to this position. You have it to employment position, to property, but not to a commission position. That's a privilege.
But since the applicant is being questioned on his integrity, personal integrity, and because I believe
I
that
don't think anyone's raised his personal integrity yet in this meeting.
Well, let's go into the emails and find out what has been shared with the council members, so we can share that with the public and determine if the fairness doctrine applies to every applicant and every commissioner.
Okay, just for the record, though, there is no procedural due process here. Absolutely not. There is none. There is no procedural due process to a civil service commission job at all. So I just don't want to, I don't want to get us down in a path that you're essentially alleging that he has a right that he doesn't have, and that could lead to litigation, and there absolutely is no procedural due process rights.
Well, thank you for raising the term litigation. Should this commission take action, and that's why I want to talk about the emails and what was in the emails and what evidence has been provided to the council as to the basis for his removal, is it possible that the action taken by this council today will expose the city to litigation?
I don't believe so, because there is no procedural due process right to this position, and the council has the right to remove any commissioner with or without cause under the municipal code.
We have a motion.
I believe so. I think there was a clarification, and I don't know if it's clear enough to.
I think
Mr. Sullivan.
the motion is to discuss the email at this point. Is the way I understood it from Councilmember Kaji.
And I second that for the sake of transparency.
The way I understand Councilmember Kaji's motion and Councilmember Tucci's second is to discuss the email, not to actually release it, but just to have a discussion of the email.
Okay, we got one and a second, so let's have a question or clarification. Councilwoman Lewis.
My concern is that we are focusing on the person that has been put on the commission and not the process of how the person was put on the commission. And I think that by releasing emails from the city attorney to the council sets down a dangerous precedence that we don't want to establish. So I just wanted to make clarification that we are not, this meeting is not focused on the person, but on the process.
Yep.
Is that correct?
That's how I see it. As a matter of fact, there's another agenda item. I think that's going to be talking about the process. But I think this meeting is as the title.
All due respect to everyone here, I just don't want us to get in a issue where we are starting to break attorney-client privilege on anything that's not a public safety issue to the city. And I don't think that this meets that criteria. So I would urge all of us as a council to step away from the person and let's talk about the process.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis. And to be clear, I have not mentioned the individual one time at this meeting. It's the process, and it was my understanding from the attorney, unless Mr. Sullivan, I'm wrong, that the only way to reset the clock is to consider removing the appointee and starting over. And there is no reason why he can't reapply, the individual can't reapply, and we all get to interview all of the applicants.
We cannot do a motion for reconsideration because he's already been sworn into office. So the only option, if the council wants to exercise it, which they have the option of not exercising it, is to take the action under the municipal code to remove. But obviously that's an option that the council can choose to do or can choose not to do.
No, but I just, just for the record, this is all about Manbahal. It's nothing about the process. We're not deciding the process today. We're deciding whether we're going to remove Manbahal or not. So unfortunately, it's all about him. The process is going to be coming back at a later meeting. And quite honestly, if we got nothing to hide, let's talk about the emails. It's our city attorney that sent us the emails with information on it that I think the public might want to discuss. That's why I'm okay with opening up the discussion. I don't think there was anything incriminating in those emails. Let's vote.
That motion carries with council members Griffith, Lewis, and Shake voting no.
So referencing the email of, September 15th at 7:08 p.m., you mentioned that Councilmember Kalani has asked about the potential for calling a special meeting on Monday, September 19th, considering the potential removal of the recently appointed and sworn in Civil Service Commissioner Shamindra Manbahal. Next, I'd like to turn to a subsequent email dated September 16th.
I thought this was only about the email that was calling the meeting.
I'm asking questions about all the emails from the city attorney to the council related to this special meeting.
Email, I think if we're going to open up a series, then we should have another vote just to make sure that it's clear what we're doing.
I move that we discuss all emails pertaining to this item from the city attorneys to us.
I second.
Your Honor, that motion carries with council members Griffith, Kalani, and Lewis voting no.
So I'd like to move on to the next email of September 16th. So in that email to the mayor and the members of the city council, you referenced the potential for a special meeting to be held on Monday at 8:00 a.m. You mentioned the city clerk was working on an agenda for the special meeting. And then you reference, and I quote, a Google search of Shamindra Manbahal finds some of the articles that the city council should be aware of. And then there's a series of documents.
That's correct.
What are the documents that were placed in this email?
There are a couple of news articles from Hawthorne, former employment. Again, I don't have it on my phone. I must have saved it into our storage system. It's West Valley, I think, Water District. And then there are some settlement agreements with Hawthorne. One is a separation, and one is a repayment schedule for paying, I think it was $8,333 for over a time period to get to $25,000 of repayment.
One of these was a document that was labeled confidential, and it was a redacted report, which I believe references Mr. Manbahal.
Yes, that was a Hawthorne investigation regarding Mr. Manbahal.
And that investigation was conducted by an outside contractor?
Correct, and it was available on the internet.
And in that report, it appears to be highly redacted because from what I could see, there are only 3 or 4 pages of a larger document.
That's what was posted on the internet, I assume in response to a public records request.
Subsequent to that email, did you provide any other information to the mayor and city council on Mr. Manbahal?
I think the only other thing that was mentioned in that email was the fact that his application was dated July 20th. And according to the article about his resignation, his last day with West Valley, if that's the correct name of the water district, was June 30th. So that was either incorrect or an error.
So since the issuance of this email on September 16th, have you or anyone in the city that you're aware of established any contact with the city of Hawthorne?
I have not.
Have you had any contact with the West Valley Water Basin?
I have not.
Have you had any contact with the authors of the article in the Daily Breeze or the other newspaper?
I have not.
Mr. Chaparian, as the Chief Executive Officer of the City of Torrance, our city has approximately how many employees?
We have 1,300 FTEs, and then with the recurrent, we'll get up to 2,000 at some point.
And also, as in your role as the city manager, you do have oversight over the applications submitted by the general public for commission positions?
There are times when the city clerk shares the binders with us, yes.
Just for the record, the applications go to the city clerk. They don't go to the city manager for review or action. They're just, they're provided to the city council, the city attorney, and the city managers at the same time, but the city manager has no review process of it.
So when it comes to submissions by potential commissioners, who is in charge of vetting those applications?
The city council holds interviews. That's been our practice as part of the process, and makes the appropriate appointment upon deliberation.
So the mayor and the city council are the only body that has
investigatory?
Yes, thank you. It's Monday. So the city council has that responsibility and no other office in the city?
I'm not sure what the investigatory implies. The council goes through a vetting process by holding interviews to determine which applicants you deemed qualified based on your experience and vetting process. And then we go through the deliberation process here at the council meeting through the nominations and voting. That's the extent that my office is involved.
What I'm trying to find out is, since the city clerk, her only mandate in her office is to determine if the individual is a Torrance resident, if they are a voter, and also if they've passed the course that's required of commissioners.
Right.
What I'm hearing right now is that the only body that can vet candidates is the city council at this time.
Yes, sir.
For the city council and the mayor, we share one executive assistant, is that correct?
That is correct.
Would it be her duty, working with the city council and the mayor, to conduct investigations on behalf of the council?
We have not had a practice of engaging in investigations, and I believe that may be outside of the scope of this individual's typical job duties.
Just to clarify, no one except the council and the mayor have the responsibility for vetting applicants.
That is correct.
Here's another question, and this goes back to the employees of the city. And I know this is different because we're talking about an appointee versus an employee. But for employees of the city, when they're interviewed, is it the Human Resources Department that conducts research into the background and the qualifications of each applicant?
We have thresholds under law when we can conduct investigations, but typically the Human Resources Civil Service will conduct the background portion, and then the hiring department will make reference checks prior to appointment.
And if during the course of that research, it's found that an applicant has stated a fact that is wrong or incorrect, would that provide the basis for a summary dismissal?
It may, depending on the totality of the circumstances.
Here's another question for our city attorney. Going back to your statement that that commissioners are not accorded procedural due process.
You have to have a property interest, whether it's to a job or a piece of property. As you mentioned, during World War II, losing your right to citizenship definitely is due process. Losing your property, definitely due process. Losing a business, definitely due process. A appointed position here, you have no right to it. It's a privilege, not a right.
So,
But that being said, you can be fair to him and let him, come up and speak and do whatever else. But he's just not entitled to due process protections like an employee would be.
let me ask more specifically about our two senior positions here in the city, both city manager and city attorney. Both positions, if I understand correctly, are at-will positions?
No. The city manager is at will. The city attorney is civil service.
Civil service, okay.
Correct.
So could you define at will?
I'm not an employment lawyer, but essentially you serve at the pleasure of your employer.
And so in the instance of the city manager, that would be reference to the city council?
That's correct.
The city manager serves at the pleasure of the city council?
Correct. There is a very complicated process if the council wanted to remove the city manager that's found in the charter. You have to have a public meeting. I think it has to be a public hearing, actually. You have to adopt a resolution, serve it on him, give him notice, then conduct another public hearing, and I believe there is then a requirement of I don't know if it's unanimous or a majority to remove him. But it's a very complicated process in the city charter for the city manager.
To sum up, based on the questions that I've asked this morning, it appears then that it's the council that has the responsibility to vet all applicants to the city. In addition, it's the council's responsibility then to conduct interviews and to conduct our own searches on the individual's background. What I find troubling today is that if this council is taking action to remove a commissioner based on a cursory Google search, which to me should not be the sum and substance of a full vetting process, then I find the basis for the removal of the individual to be half-baked. If we are to conduct a fair and thorough investigation of this applicant and any other applicant, then the research must be fair, thorough, and as wide and deep as possible to ensure that whoever this council appoints to any commission is qualified and has passed the full vetting process of the council.
I was not conducting an investigation. There was stuff online, both social media and on the internet. And typically my office does provide background information to the city council on various items. So I am not recommending to remove him. I'm not recommending to keep him on. That is clearly the decision of the city council. I just wanted that to be clear that that was not an investigation. That was just stuff that was out on social media that I thought the council should be aware of.
And yet, since this information was provided to the council members in lieu of any other information, it seems to me that the basis of this recommendation by the city clerk today is based on very thin and very sketchily researched background information on the applicant or on our commissioner.
Again, the meeting was called by a majority of the council. And I just want to clarify for the city clerk, I feel like she's kind of getting beat up a little bit. We don't have a provision that the city council recommends. We always have a staff department head do it. So she's the elected official. She deals with commissioners, so that's why the recommendation came from her. Just to be clear, it says consider. It doesn't say to be removed, that she's recommending to remove. It says to consider to remove. Again, the council requested that the special meeting happen, so she just essentially wrote the item. But because we didn't want to write it as, we don't have a practice of the city council recommending it, and since it was a split council, we thought if it said city council recommendation to, that the people who did not vote for the special meeting would have been upset. So that's why the city clerk wrote the item.
Again, I just want to make it very clear, I was unaware of any of these articles prior to my request to have this item have my vote changed, which it cannot, have this item reconsidered, which it cannot. I am requesting a restart. He is more than welcome to reapply. I would like the opportunity for there to be even more applicants and for us to be able to speak with them, interview them, understand their contributions or their ability to contribute to the commission better. I did not know of any of these articles before my request for basically a restart of this commission appointment. Thank you.
I want to echo Councilwoman Kalani's comments that I too did not know anything about the applicant. But that being said, this is the only forum in which that we can have a do-over on what's already done. If the current applicant is successful in the application process, then here we are. But I want to circle back again because I think it's very unfair for us to single out one applicant for a commission and make it be about using extra resources that the city doesn't have, and that's time and money, to vet applicants for a commission or city council that has historically never been done before. That is a lot of time, a lot of effort. The city is struggling to find applicants to apply for the open positions we have just to maintain city services. And I think putting an additional burden on staff to go and vet commissioners is not the direction that we should be headed in. We have a commitment as a council, not only to respect, but also appreciate each other's perspectives on how to move the city forward, and putting an additional burden on our staff to vet commissioners is not the way I see that we should move forward. So with that being said, I want to go back on record as saying I had not read any of the articles, didn't know anything about them before the email. And again, not about the person, but the process.
As I understood the request for this meeting, not to be anything about the specific issue about the worthiness of the applicant, but the fact that I think many of us, if not all of us, well, certainly not all of us, but many of us were caught off guard by this significant change in our process for selecting a commissioner, and the fact that we weren't really given the opportunity to see the applicant's information or properly do the vetting that would normally be done. And as Councilwoman Kalani mentioned, is that we all want the opportunity to, with the information given to us about the fact that this process was completely unusual, we would like the opportunity to revisit the vote on this. But because of the fact that this involves swearing in of a commissioner, which can't be done by the reversal of the vote, basically want to consider undoing that process so that we can do it again with the full understanding of what we're doing, and also then provide any applicants the full opportunity to apply, including the existing applicant under discussion today, and do it back in the way that we as a council are fully involved in the vetting process, and start this process once again. It has nothing to do with the qualifications of the applicant. It has everything to do with how this all came about, and the fact that many of us were completely caught off guard by the process, and the fact that we weren't given the information ahead of time in the meeting to do any vetting whatsoever.
Madam Clerk, could you please clarify what you said earlier, why the folders were not provided to us, please?
The folders were taken, the binders with the unredacted applications were taken upstairs, and Mayor Chen had asked me to remove them because he said you wouldn't need them, you wouldn't be interviewing, he was making the appointment. And again, I had already sent an email to council that the unredacted applications had been provided to Ms. Brasino, and that she could provide those unredacted applications to members of the council.
Thank you so much. For the record, I just want to let the public know anytime I receive an application, I sometimes call the references. I do my own research, and at this time, I didn't have the opportunity to call the references or do anything because I didn't have that information.
I sure hope our short-term memory is not going bad, because if I recall, all of us, minus Councilwoman Lewis, interviewed Mr. Manbahal for commission appointments. If I remember correctly, it was just about a month prior to this event that Mr. Manbahal had applied for, I believe, 3 other commissions. So to say that we didn't have, the opportunity to look into Mr. Manbahal, I would argue the fact that we did. If I remember correctly, all of us, minus Councilwoman Lewis, have interviewed Mr. Manbahal within the last, I'd say, 2 months. I just want to go on record saying that I believe that each one of us up here, minus Lewis, have interviewed Mr. Manbahal, both in person or over the phone, and the application was available to each and every one of us, either at the city clerk's office or requested via email. The package from 2 months ago was basically the identical, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was identical application that was submitted 2 months ago for the previous appointments.
And just to make sure I clarify, the binders were at the city, at the Isela's office on the desk, and then I asked Rebecca, I said, Rebecca, I was trying to streamline this process, 3 applicants, and some of them were old applications, and looking at the ordinance, I got, let's streamline where we can. So I said, do they still need, the binders? And he said, no, we'll send it back. So probably, as I think back, is probably, send out the binders, people could read them, and then I was going to go with the streamlined process. Maybe that would have been a better process in hindsight, but it is correct that a lot of the applicants, at least 2 of the 3, were in the August 9th package as well, I believe.
As far as comments made by my colleagues regarding the process and the procedure for commission applicants, I do not believe that in order to change the procedure requires the removal of a sitting commissioner. I believe if we want to focus on making changes to the city charter under which the mayor made the appointment, then that should be the focus of our discussion. But I don't believe that we have to throw the baby out with the bathwater and to remove a sitting commissioner in order to achieve that goal.
Mayor, I just want to clarify, Councilmember Kaji, it's the Torrance Municipal Code, not the charter. The charter requires a vote of the people.
Just a couple of comments. I did have the opportunity to speak to and interview Mr. Manbahal. We had a very good discussion, and I believe I actually even might have nominated him and voted for him in the past. I go back to the fact that I turned in my binder. I put a lot of notes with my binders. They were all turned in, and I felt strongly I was doing a disservice to the other 2 applicants. I don't remember them. I don't remember ever interviewing them. Maybe I did, but I didn't remember them enough to give them, I think the word was a due process, or their fair opportunity to talk to me about the position. I know that Mr. Manbahal was sworn in, but he has not attended any meetings yet. And that was one reason why I requested that today prior to a meeting this evening.
Yeah, I do want to say about the comments related to interviewing applicants. Maybe I do have a short-term memory problem, but I don't recall interviewing Mr. Manbahal. I do recall that he was an applicant in a previous time. I have interviewed and talked to hundreds of residents who have applied over the years for various different commissions, and there's no way I can possibly remember all the facts about people that I've interviewed. And to imply that I should have this retained intimate knowledge about somebody who I may or may not have ever interviewed, and just for the record, I only interview those who reach out to me. If they didn't reach out to me, I didn't interview them. And just because I had their application doesn't mean that I've done the full vetting that some people might want to do. And typically, if a person doesn't reach out to me and I only have their application, I don't consider them for appointment. And then the fact that the applications are given to us temporarily and then returned to the city clerk, and I have no copies of those applications, further makes this process of trying to remember something from a month ago or however many months ago irrelevant to this whole issue. And that it really is all irrelevant to what we're trying to do here tonight, and that is that 1 or more council members here would like to potentially consider changing their vote on the vote that was taken at our last meeting. But unfortunately, because this involves a sworn-in commissioner, we have to reverse that process in order to allow a recast of our votes. Again, it's not about the person. It's about the fact that we have to go through this process if we are going to, in essence, reconsider the vote that was given under extremely unusual circumstances at our last meeting.
For the record, I did not have any interaction with Mr. Manbahal during any of the applicants.
We'll go to the public for comments.
I would like to thank especially Council Members Kalani and Griffiths, also Lewis and Sheikh, for bringing this back to the issue of process. Mayor Chen, you came into that meeting and made a very substantial change to the process in which commissioners were selected and seated. You came in there, you did not notify the people sitting with you, I'm going to make a change. Instead, you sprung it on them, and then you said, I am the mayor. I am elected as the mayor. These people here are all elected, and they all should be part of this process, and they had been part of this process. And you came in here and made a change. And I find it deeply disturbing that you had Rebecca here take the binders and remove the binders so that they did not have information on whom they were voting for. This is a disgrace. Thank you.
I just want to mention that I think that fundamental confusion, audience and council, is just happens to be the name of the item. It says consider removal of Shamindra Manbahal from the Civil Service Commission. Recommendation, consider the removal, and it doesn't say why. And so even as we were approaching talking, we thought, well, should we talk about the procedure or should we talk about the person? You're right, it's not about the person, it is about the procedure. Nobody had a chance to vet any other candidate. The council was very confused about what they were voting for. It was very obvious when watching that everybody was stunned, or not everyone. So again, not about the person, about the way that things were handled.
I think probably the process would have been better if all the binders were at least kept there for review. I admit to that. And again, I was trying to streamline the appointment of one vacancy, and knowing that I think it was one vacancy, correct?
And to be clear, the item was written that the mayor would be making the appointment.
Right. I know that a lot of folks were saying they were shocked. I just don't want to peel a scab that I think everyone had noticed and if you read the agenda. As a matter of fact, the first time I realized the process was actually for the August 9th appointment. However, at that point, I just went with the process as usual because I was a large group. I was in an attempt to follow the written process to fill one vacancy, to simplify some process so that, it doesn't be a long drawn out. 2 to 3 applicants were already in the folder for the August appointment. Only that there was one new applicant, but understand.
I spoke under orals, but I think I can speak again. Thank you, Mayor Chen, for clarifying the action that you took upon yourself at last council meeting. In discussing with many people at the meeting, we were terribly confused about what was going down, and then there was no time at all where we really could speak to the confusion because we are not experts or attorneys, even though we come to the meetings. Congratulations for trying to streamline things. But you see what happened without getting a group of people to help you streamline things. Look at how much time we're spending today. Look at how many questions, which seemed like an inquisition of people and their jobs. The only way to undo something that people were uncomfortable with is to remove Mr. M and start again.
At this point, offer Mr. Manbahal. I see him in the back room there.
I applied because I'm home. I'm at the point where I'm contemplating if I should go back to work or not. And I have a tremendous amount of experience in local government, as you've all seen, held some high-level positions, and with that comes scrutiny. But I did my job. Transparency is a double-edged sword. You can take it as you please, but I was scrutinized for doing what I was trained to do. Elected officials for the prior cities did not get reelected. City managers were terminated because, again, I was doing my job protecting the public's funds. The repayment of the money was completely done. It was an advance on salary. Yes, it's not traditional, but I had a hardship with my family, and the city afforded me that, and it was completely repaid. At the West Valley Water District, I was promoted 3 times in 4 years. I started as CFO, and I ended my career there as the general manager and chief executive officer. I've increased their reserves to the tune of $40 million over my 4 years there. I've revamped their entire human resources and accounting policies and procedures. I've negotiated MOUs, labor contracts. To say, yes, that there's negative things in there and the process I'm hearing that this governing body was confused on, well, the action was taken. And as a resident of Torrance, I feel like considering removal from that commission is a disservice to the citizens of Torrance and to the employees because they need help. I spent all day Saturday going through the binder, listening to the testimonials to get prepared for this evening's meeting. And that's the kind of person that you're going to get. Experience. I can hit the ground running from day one. But, you know, if that's not the process that this governing body is looking for and the expertise, then thank you. That's just what I have to say. I appreciate the time and discussion and consideration.
Hi, I'm Jackie Eklund again. I believe there were 3 candidates from last meeting, and I think all of council should have looked at all 3 candidates in those binders and considered them, because the other 2 we're not talking about, but just that you all have that opportunity to do that.
Let's come back to the council.
I just want to apologize to you, Mr. Manbahal, that this got so personal. I did my best to make sure it wasn't personal. This, again, is about the process to me, and we've had a good conversation in the past. I've appreciated it, and I just wish it had not become so personal.
Again, I echo Councilwoman Kalani's statement. And, sir, I have not brought your name up, and I'm not going to do it again. But as someone who was standing in your position a little over 2 weeks ago, I just want to pay respect for the amount of tolerance that takes to be able to do it. Please understand that it is not personal for you. And however this turns out, I want to thank you for being an involved resident of the city of Torrance. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we do appreciate your efforts.
Obviously, we want to change the process, but that's not the item before us. I think discussion about changing the process will be coming back to council soon. I'm all in favor of changing the process. Looking at Commissioner Manbahal, his experience, his background, I think he's got a lot to bring to the table that will be beneficial. I'm going to have to agree with Councilman Kaji's analogy. We don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Yeah, doing a reset or a restart, it's all fine and dandy, but there's a person involved. I would not be agreeing to removing Mr. Manbahal because he was rightfully voted in. Whether there was confusion or not, that's our job to research. It was our job. We were given notice that the mayor was going to be nominating or appointing with the council's approval. He got approval. There was no policies that were violated, and there's really no grounds for removal, in my opinion, because hearsay or a couple articles that pop up from Daily Breeze is not really within the I guess the range of why we should remove Mr. Manbahal. Now, if we want to remove Mr. Manbahal because it would make us feel better, I think that's just the wrong reason. We need to give ourselves a reason why we want to remove Manbahal. And we didn't like the process is not a reason, because that process is something that was allowed to happen. I'm all in favor of changing that process, but I will not be voting to remove Manbahal because he was rightfully voted in.
For those here in the audience and for those who are listening in at home, the city of Torrance' most important asset are the people who live here, because you chose to live here, you chose to have your children go to our schools, you've sunk your roots here in the city. I think it's highly commendable that we have residents who volunteer their time and their experience to serve in these appointed positions. My hope is that this process does not send a chilling effect on the residents who may view this as having to run a gauntlet in order to serve as a volunteer. If there is a need to change the process, then let's focus on that. However, we have a difficult time in finding willing and experienced and capable individuals to serve in these commission position. We want to encourage more to step forward and to lend a hand because our city needs that. However, I'm very troubled that this process has caught Mr. Manbahal as collateral damage to this discussion and focused on the process. To you, Mr. Manbahal, I wish you weren't subject to this. I haven't met you personally, but I thank you for coming here today and appearing in person and shining the light on your past. And from what I've seen and heard, I find you to be very experienced, and we need that help. So thank you for your willingness to serve.
Like I said earlier, I never had the opportunity to speak or interview with Mr. Manbahal. Unfortunately, you never reached out to me, and I also take a blame. Normally, I do reach out to the appointments, but I would urge you to please reach out to me and get to know you more. This is a very important commission. We believe if somebody is serious, they should reach out to the council for interview. You had applied twice and never heard from you, and I would urge you, and I'd like to have interaction with you. I'd like to know you. Civil service is a quasi-judicial. It's an important commission. For me to appoint anybody or nominate anybody, I need to know you more.
I'll interject here. I think we all have our own process, and then maybe that's some of the things, I believe each elected official, council member, and myself choose our own process. Some may say I only interview those who reach out, and some would review all the applicants and determine who. I choose the latter because not every member reaches out. As a matter of fact, I remember current Councilwoman Lewis about a year ago when she was applying for commission, and we're still during the COVID, and I reached out and interviewed her via Zoom. And I think your comment was, you're the only person that reached out to me. We all have different process. Just because we don't interview someone doesn't mean they may be less qualified, but so far it looks like we all have different styles and process. I actually would reach out to someone even if they don't call, but that's just me.
Applicants deserve the right to be listened to be heard, and I'm concerned about the other two applicants that didn't get the full review of the council. I would hope that when residents see how fair we're trying to be here, that they will apply.
Yes, you did reach out for me. I emailed all of my council members when I was being appointed the first time and then reappointed to the Civil Service Commission. And I can say that my experience on the Civil Service Commission has been one of the most impactful things that I've ever done. And for anyone who is at home watching or will watch later, please don't let this deter you from being a volunteer for the city. It is our commissions that we rely on to help us make the decisions for the greater good of the community. Please do not let this one incident deter you for the process. And with that being said, we changed the process. We changed the process last Tuesday when the mayor, which is his right to do so, appointed someone. It's been the same process, long-standing process, since anyone can remember. And the folks that were polled that night have vast experience within the city. Oddly enough, had we followed the long-standing process of letting commissioners nominate a candidate and vote, the odd thing is we wouldn't be here today because Mr. Manbahal would have been seated as a commissioner as he was, strictly based on the vote, as Councilman Matucci referred to earlier. I just wanted to circle around and clarify that we're talking about process and changing the process when we changed the process last Tuesday. It's not a matter of changing the process, it's going back to past practice.
We as council members have the right to reconsider a vote that we've taken in the past, is that correct?
Correct. Under the council rules of order, you can make that within one of the next two succeeding meetings normally.
So we're within those guidelines to reconsider?
Correct. If we hadn't sworn the person in, we would have been able to do a reconsideration.
So in this particular case, we have the unusual situation where we've sworn someone in as a result of that vote. In order to reconsider, we would have to undo that swearing in, essentially by removing that person from that sworn position, and then allow us to reconsider our vote. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And in essence, is that what we're potentially going to do tonight?
That is what the council is considering doing, correct.
I was so rattled by this change in process and caught off guard. My vote, even though I abstained, is not the vote that I wish I had made, and so I am looking forward to the opportunity to reconsider my vote, as I believe that's the wish of the mover of bringing this forward, Councilwoman Kalani. So that's really what this is all about. It has nothing to do with who was sworn in or what their qualifications are or any of that. This process is unfortunate that this happened, and I want to make sure that our residents who are considering wanting to volunteer for the city make sure that they don't feel that by doing so they're going to get caught into an ugly web. I will do everything in my power to make sure that our future commission appointments are transparent and according to a process that we as a council agree upon completely. And we look forward to having as much participation from anyone in the public who's interested in serving our community. I certainly hope that this issue here that we're dealing with right now does not shake anyone's desire to want to serve our city. Commissioners are a significantly valuable asset to our city and our council.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that we keep Mr. Manbahal in his position that he rightfully was voted in. It's not his fault that we having to go back and review policy. But part of my motion, I would like to also bring back an item to review policies, maybe even across the board, not just for commission appointments, but also council appointments, basically any kind of appointments. We can bring back an item to discuss and possibly change those policies to meet our likings of this elected body. I personally just don't think that we need to remove Mr. Manbahal because there was nothing that he did that was wrong. It was us that were going back and forth regarding policy. So I'm okay with changing the policy, keep Mr. Manbahal.
I second.
Start voting, please. Your Honor, that motion fails with Councilmembers Griffith, Kalani, and Shake voting no, and Commissioner Lewis abstaining.
I motion that we respectfully ask that Mr. Manbahal be removed and that we start over with a notification of opportunity for applicants to apply to the Civil Service Commission, including the invitation for Mr. Manbahal to apply as well, and everybody get the fair process.
Second.
Start voting, please. Your Honor, that motion carries with Councilmembers Kaji, Matucci, and Mayor Chen voting no.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Start voting, please. Your Honor, that motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. I guess have the rest of the good day.